Good evening to all our friends and partners in Facebook and watching us around the world. This is Reverend Dr. Aquilus Ricks with AfriH, Africans for the Restoration of Ethics in Government. We are a nonpartisan organization designed to harness the expertise of professional Africans and global partners in discussion concerning issues impacting Africa with the intent to help solve and address Africa's problems. I want to welcome you to our Zoom feed, and those of you who will be watching us on Facebook or on YouTube. We also have a YouTube channel. You can check us up, AfriH, AFREIG on YouTube, and subscribe. But we really want to have these discussions because we believe that Africa has potential. We believe that African people are special, and we believe that there are talents and their abilities, among the African people that need to be motivated, they need inspiration, and we come alongside as Africans to inspire that generation to begin to think outside the box and to believe in their dreams and to believe that they can, through innovation and education and expertise, they can build a better society in Africa. We started last week monologue teaching on the introduction to public administration. And today I want to continue part 2 to that teaching that we did last week. So welcome again to AfriH, and we're going to begin now our second part to the teaching on introduction to public administration. Well, what is public administration? Oftentimes we hear the term public administration, sometimes you hear public service, and sometimes people get confused what it really means. The terminology pretty much used interchangeably most times. When someone talks about public administration, pretty much they also talk about public service. But what is public administration? At the National Center for Education Statistics, this is the definition, that public administration is a field of study that prepares a person to serve as a manager in public service in a local, state, or federal government. All right. So it's a field of study. Public administration is a field of study in which an individual is prepared academically to be able to serve in a leadership capacity within local government, state government, or federal government. All right. Now the next question comes: well, if public administration prepares you for this career path or this leadership role in government, then how does it go about doing that? How does studying public administration equips an individual to be ready for public service? It's interesting because when you think about that question, the how to it narrows down to the fact that by studying public administration, by learning to be a public administrator, you are pretty much entrusted. You are informed, or you are taught that you are entrusted, with the responsibilities of implementing government policies or public policies. All right. So that's how this process, developed. As an individual is being trained or being prepared in public service, public administration, that person is being equipped or being informed or being taught that by serving, in capacity of leadership in government, you are being trusted. You are entrusted with the responsibility to implement government policies. Now, pretty much, in any related capacity, you are called to serve. So, for example, if you are called to serve in a financial department of the Ministry of Finance, as a public servant, as a public administrator, well, you have been entrusted by the government to implement the financial policies for the nation. That which pertains to businesses, money and things like that. You are entrusted with that policy to implement it. If you are in the area of commerce, you look at the Commerce Department or the Ministry of Commerce, well, you are also entrusted in that regard as well concerning, commerce, exchange of goods and services, things like that. You are entrusted with that policy, to implement it within the national setting so that the nation as a whole can benefit from your service. And government also can have a legacy that will prove that she is trustworthy to the citizens. All right. So in studying public administration, that equipping takes place, that academic know-how takes place. Okay, that knowledge is imparted into you, how to go about handling policies in different sectors, or in whatever sector you are entrusted with, handling policies for those sectors, and then making sure those policies are implemented. Okay, that means, you see, it means that when policies are formed or approved by the government, right? So you have policies makers that approve a particular, a particular policy for the government. When those policies are formed or approved, the government in turn those policies, all right? They turn those policies to the public administrator, right? So after policies are formed, and government say, you know what, we approve these policies, all right? The government in turn the policy over to the public administrator or to the public servant, okay, to put those policies into action. To put those policies into action by following the objectives for implementation to produce the desired results underlying the policies. That's the whole essence of public administration. Policies makers come together, form these policies, government approve of these policies, and then turn these policies over to the public servants or to the public administrator to make sure that these policies that have been approved and put into action, that you are being trusted now to put these policies into action, okay, by following the objectives for implementation. The objectives for implementation so that the desired results of the policy that have been formed will be realized, that the population will benefit. The citizenry will benefit from the policies that have been delivered into your care, into your supervision for implementation. All right, that's what public policy, public administration is all about. There's a relationship between public policy and public administration. You cannot separate the two; they are intertwined. The policy makers put together the plan, which is the policy, and they deliver it to the administrator, the public administrator, to make sure the plans are implemented. The plans are implemented. And again, the objectives are all stipulated within the policy, within the plans. So you have follow the objectives, put together a strategy how to make sure those objectives are realized, okay, within the population as you carry out your work, and then what it benefits society. It benefits society. It adds credence. It adds respect to the government. Okay, because what the policies that have been approved are being implemented. Now, I want to give an example of what I'm talking about. So, for example, government is informed of a research indicating that there's an increase in cases of tuberculosis, TB, within a particular population. All right, so government leaders, come across a research, or maybe a presentation is made to government based on a study that has been done within a nation or within a particular locality or particular community that says that there's an increase in outbreak of tuberculosis. All right. So based on that research, well, the policymakers gather around the table. And we have a scientific research that just the result is troubling, that there's an increase in cases of tuberculosis. And actually, it's only rise within our communities. All right. So the policies makers come together based on that research, and they begin to design policies how government can address that outbreak, how government can address that issue from literally spreading and getting out of hand within the population. All right. So the policymakers put together the plan. They put together the policy based on the research. All right. That stipulates that there's a need for example, there's a need to increase testing in the community. Okay, if this thing is spreading and it's like an outbreak, we don't want to get to become like a wildfire, like a forest fire, right? So the policy stipulates that we need to look at testing. Okay, so they stipulate the need for increased testing in the population to detect signs of early, infection of tuberculosis in the population. Okay, so that prevention, so that treatment can start right away. All right, and so they go ahead and put together this policy. Well, they deliver a copy of this policy to the Department of Health, or for example, to the Ministry of Health. because it is that jurisdiction responsible for the well-being of the citizens, right? So they deliver a copy of the policy to the Department of Health or to the Ministry of Health, so the Ministry of Health can begin to put together an implementation strategy, all right, to address this policy that tells us there's an outbreak of tuberculosis within the population. Well, now the Ministry of Health now becomes the administrator of this policy, right? Because it has been presented to the Ministry of Health to address this health need impacting society, impacting the citizens. So the Ministry of Health now, as the administrator of this policy, begin to put together a plan, a strategy, so to speak, how to implement. Okay, if tuberculosis is spreading in the population, well, so they come again, they put together this plan. You know what? We need to first of all begin to use television, okay, to begin to put together ads, put ads on television to educate the public about early signs of tuberculosis. All right. So pretty much the first thing you focus on now is, you know what, let's start public awareness of this disease. Since it's an outbreak, is spreading, we want to create public awareness. All right. So they begin to put resources, funding into television ads, radio ads, to begin to inform the public that you know what, these are things to look for when, to let you know that these are early signs of tuberculosis. All right. Well, not only doing that, but then they also begin to strategize. You know what? It's not just enough just to inform concerning early signs and detection of tuberculosis, but we're also going to look at the geography of the landscape. All right, and we can identify areas or sectors that we can put different testing centers where we can direct our population to have easy access to a testing center. So they begin to, based on the size of the landscape, the geography, they say, okay, we'll put, one center on the north side, one center on the south side, one center on the west side, east side, one center in the middle, so that people within those areas can have easy access to testing centers. All right. But you see, but they don't want to stop there. They don't want to stop there. So you have the television ads doing awareness, creating public awareness to detect early signs of tuberculosis. You have the creation of different testing centers whereby people can easily go to be tested, for tuberculosis. But then you also have another thing they also utilize the media, all right, to start prevention programs for tuberculosis. All right. So they begin to utilize these resources because the policy has been given to them, and they need to implement these policies for the better society, for the welfare of the citizens. All right. So they're not only just talking about signs, but they're also giving information how to prevent, okay, tuberculosis, and then testing centers where to go to be physically tested for tuberculosis. All right. And now after with all these things, okay, at these centers, as people come to be tested and all these things going on, they are also collecting data. They're collecting data, on those who have been tested. They're collecting data for those who have been treated. They're collecting data for those who unfortunately may have perished or may have died because of tuberculosis. And they're also collecting data on hospitalization, those who have been hospitalized with the disease, okay, over a given period of time. All right. So when you look at all these different facets of what's happening, after the Ministry of Health get the policy to implement, this is what we describe as representative of public administration. The policy tells you that there is a problem. The research says it's a problem. The policy says this is the plan we have to address this problem. And then the administrative part kicks in, where you begin to put these plans into action, into practical actions that the citizens can see that government is doing something to address this concern or this need, this health need, or this pandemic, whatever you may have called it, plaguing society. Okay, that's what public administration is all about. So the objective of public policy, just to recap, is to address the spread of this disease. All right. So the policy says the disease is real, the research so it's real, and we have a game plan how to address it. This is the policy the government is going to take to address this disease. All right. And then it is turned over to the administration, okay, to begin to put these policies into effect. Okay. Now so that is similar with all branches of government. Okay, all sectors of government. Every department, every ministry within government exists to meet certain policy requirements, so to address certain policy issues. That's why these ministries exist. That's what they are there for. Government have been structured in such a way that government looks at the entire population and identify areas that impact the lives of the citizens and put together these and have these departments or these ministries to address these specific issues that impact the lives of the citizens with the intent to improve the quality of life of the people and make life better for our people. That's what public administration is all about. That's what it's all about. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit about what public administration is not. What is it is not, because oftentimes when we look in different countries, okay, now we're talking about Africa, when we look in different when we look within the African setting, okay, we see some practices that is not consistent with true public administration, okay, with the true essence of what public administration is all about. So I want to just talk a little bit about what public administration is not. All right. It is not having a public servant unanimously decide how to use funds allocated by government for a certain department or ministry. All right, let me say that again. Public administration is not having a public servant take it upon himself or herself to use funds that have been allocated by government for a certain program, okay, and they just take it upon themselves to use that fund whatever way they want to use, however they want to use it. That is not public administration. That's not public administration. Now, let me give you another example, because this one was, well, it kind of hit home because someone, recently brought it up to my attention. And here's what I said. They talked about a public servant who decided, now listen to this, he decided to use monies that was allocated for a certain government program. So the money was set aside for a certain government program. In fact, when the money was set aside for this program, there was an oversight committee that was also set in place, okay, to oversee the distribution of these monies and everything related to this money in this project. All right. So the appropriations was made, the money was set aside, an oversight committee was set up to oversee how this money is spent, to ensure that this money goes towards this program and this program alone. All right. Well, without consulting the oversight committee, the government official went ahead, okay, and used the money for another program. All right. And the explanation that he gave was that the money belongs to the government. So if another program that the government has is lacking in funding, then the government has the right to take money from other programs to fully fund that other program without consulting the committee, because the money is the government's money. And that was his rationale for why he made the decision to use money that were allocated for that program without even consulting the oversight committee. All right. And folks, as I heard that story, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because I know for sure that is not public administration. That is not public administration. And these are some of the things we want to help Africa correct. That is not public administration. You see, when appropriations have been made and an oversight committee has been set up, okay, it means that that committee has been given legal jurisdiction over funds pertaining to that program. Okay, that is why it was set up to oversee the funding for that program. So whatever is done with that money has to be done through or in collaboration with the oversight committee that have been set up to ensure that the money is used to fund the program. All right. Now, I wouldn't doubt that sometimes there are some programs government have that may lack funding, that you want to appropriate monies there. I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that. But the train of thought when it comes to public administration is that if that's a situation of that nature and you cannot find funding from anywhere else, okay, then you know what, you call the oversight committee, You have a dialogue and a conversation with them. There's a meeting of the minds, okay, that everybody will be on the same page that, you know what, I think this program is so needed that even though we have money for our program, maybe we can use 50% or 25% to help fund that program. Or if we got to scrap our program for now, table our program, put it, but at least the oversight committee has to be a part of the decision-making process for the allocation and the distribution of that fund. But to take upon yourself to appropriate or to allocate it, distribute the fund, assign it to something else without regard for the committee set aside to oversee the fund is a violation of public trust, is a violation of the ethics of public administration. And so that's why public administration is not. That's why it is not. And these are some of the things we ought to pay close consideration to be able to improve our services. Because it creates tension within government, and the public is looking and see this, the infighting among public servants, among public administrators, and they're wondering, I mean, is this a joke? Is this something, how come these administrators cannot get along? How come there's no order within the governmental sector? And so citizens begin to ask this question, and in worst case, their trust begin to erode. Their trust in government and the institutions of government begin to erode when they see these practices done. Okay, so this is not what public administration is all about. That's not what it's all about. All decisions pertaining to a fund that have an oversight committee, all decisions must go through that committee. It has to go through that committee because that's the structure that was set up when policies were made. That's the structure that was set up when that fund was created. Okay, it was set up that way. You have to stick with the system. You have to stick with it. And discover, you see, when it comes to government and running government, I discovered that, if we only stick with the established system, it's not difficult. Leading a government or leading an institution is not as difficult as we think. What makes it difficult is that we keep cutting corners, or we keep going outside the boundaries set up for government. Remember, government is an institution set up by man. It didn't just evolve from somewhere. It is man who sat down and said, you know what, we need a structure whereby we can better society. And based on that structure, we need to put together policies or a game plan, that will underline the responsibilities of each department to address each specific policy issue and just let it run smoothly. Every now and then, as people begin to overstep the bounds and go outside the parameters that have been stipulated by government, then we create all these problems for ourselves. If we simply stick with the system that has been set in place, the system of accountability, the system of structure, things can be better. Things can be better. So all receipts, when all proper accounting in terms of debits and credits related to this account must be documented by the committee, documented and preserved as public records. That's how you create trust in government. You see, the action of the public administrator or the public servant impacts the government. The legacy of the government is directly related to the administrators and the public servants overseeing these policies implementation. It is directly related to that. If the administrator, the public administrator, or the public servants are not, lack integrity, guess what happened? It reflects on the entire government. We will say the government there's no integrity in government. One person action impacts the entire system. If we have a consistency of integrity and people following the rules and sticking by established laws and guidelines set, guess what? People will hail the government as being successful because what? The administrators or the public servants overseeing these departments that implement this policy, they are doing their job. They are sticking by the books. They hold themselves accountable to what is laid down, and they are following the rules of implementation. That's how trust in government is established, because of how public administrators treat the implementation of policies entrusted to them. Okay. Now, the end goal of public administration, let me say this, the end goal of public administration is trusting government. Okay. It's trusting government, but why? Taking care of society. That's what it boils down to. All right. The end of public administration is trusting government. How do you get to that place of trust, of establishing trust in government? By how you treat society, by how you treat the citizen, by how you carry out the objectives that have been placed into your hands, how you carry it out. All right. So as public administrators, we have to bear that in mind. We have to keep that in mind. We have to be cognizant of that. Okay. That you know, legacies hang on our performances. Legacies, governmental legacies, all hang on our behavior, how we carry out our responsibility, how we address, how we approach our responsibilities. You know, you have been trusted with something delicate. It's called public servant. It's public service. You serve the public. You serve the public. In other words, if there's 1 million people in the population, all 1 million people cannot come and do and do the particular work. I mean, that's impossible, right? So what they do, they elect an official, and then an official of that official, like the president, appoints you, okay, to serve the public interest in doing this task, because the entire population cannot do it. All right, there are other things to be done. So public administration is pretty much, you represent the public, you serve the public, and so you have to serve with that mindset that I'm accountable to the public. Okay, so just let me just admonish you as public servants and the public servants to be, that always take note of attitudes towards policies entrusted to you. Always take note of those attitudes. What kind of attitudes you have towards those policies entrusted to your department, to your ministry? Are you approaching them, knowing that you are held in, you are accountable to them, to the public, or you are accountable, to the president who appointed you? Or do you have this approach that, because I'm the minister here, it is my responsibility. I can do anything I want to do. And so those are violations of public administration and the ethics of public administration if we think outside the fact that we are representing the public in our service to the government, or to the president who appointed us. We are doing these things to the public and for public interest. For public interest. I'm going to take a few questions before we conclude tonight. I see I have one question here in our chat. How do you build trust? How do you build the trust of government among citizens, since there has been much issue with misuse of monies? And again, that's the key. That's the key. How we go about building trust, among our citizens, and as an organization that looks into Africa, we have heard, the crowd of African people, we have heard. I mean, it's not hidden. They will always tell you cannot trust government. You cannot trust government. What the step is how? Well, the process of creating trust, it starts with what we are doing now. Awareness. It starts with teaching. It starts with instruction. It starts with letting people know that this is not the way we've done it before is has to be improved. The way we've done it before has to be pretty much. In fact, we got to script what we've been doing and revisit our approach towards government, our approach towards leadership. We have to start there. We have to start there, and then do a little bit more of a better job in terms of vetting people, vetting people who we assign, who we place as public administrators, over different ministries and departments. Now, it's a difficult thing because sometimes it's easy to, during the vetting process, someone says they all the right thing and still, to get there and do all the wrong things. But pretty much, you go a step further, also have a system of accountability. Have a system of accountability. We've said this before so many times. That when it comes to running government, even though you entrust someone with to implement these policies, you also have an evaluation tool set apart, an evaluation system set apart. That after they have done their job, whatever, you still evaluate to see, what was missed, how this thing can be improved. We have a whole auditing system to make sure that, all debits, all credits, all receipts, and the proper accounting was done, because the public need to have answers concerning how monies are being spent in public service. So creating a system of accountability, a system of transparency, watching your vetting process, make sure people who are qualified to serve in different positions of trust. And then education, I think we started there, then we should be on a good footing in Africa. Once we start in this, looking at these areas, then we'll be taking steps in the right direction. But you always have to have that constant accountability, constant transparency to make sure things are going right. Things are going right. As a leader, you don't just say, I appointed this person over finance, or I appointed this person over commerce, or this person is been appointed over education or healthcare, and I just leave them. Yeah, that's the department, that's the ministry, whatever they do. No, you have to constantly revisit to make sure things are going right, to make sure things are going well. What system they have of documentation, public records, things. You just have to just be constantly providing that oversight to make sure that things are going right, so that government can continue to run smoothly. Thank you for that question. Any more questions someone asked before we conclude tonight? But it is a good field of study. Public administration is a very good field of study. We need administrators, we need public servants who are trained, public servants who understand the art of public administration, who understand the science pretty much of public administration, and what it entails, and those of you who have political aspirations, we do encourage you to go into this area, to go into this, to know what it means to be entrusted with policies, to know what it means to implement those policies, and to know how it means to be held accountable for those policies. Is a very good place to start, because when you are entrusted with public money, the public funds, or when you're trusted with public projects, there's an expectation that you would do it in such a way that the public will be satisfied. And the training you have before you start this endeavor, the training you have is essential. And so public administration helps you lay that foundation, that you understand what it means to be a public servant. You understand the whole issue of ethics in public administration. You understand the whole issue of accountability. You understand the whole issue of responsibility. You understand those things within the governmental sector, governmental setting, and then you know how to approach your job. To be able to serve the public. And I think of all the things that really comes out of public administration is the fact that you feel good when the public is happy. I think a true public administrator feels good when the public is happy. When you're entrusted to bring clean water to a community, and you go through all the policy, objectives, and the funding. You follow all the rules, and that thing happens, and you see clean water coming through the pipes, and you know that all that happened under your watch as a leader. As a public servant, and you see people excited, that brings joy to your heart that you have done, your response was entrusted to you, and you have served the public in a good way. So we want to encourage people to go into this area. It is a good area to go into. It's a good field of study. But just remember, there's a lot of things happening in our communities in Africa. There are a lot of needs that we have, and we need trained people. We need trained people to serve in these areas of trust. We really do need trained people, and Africa can do better. I think if we're able to attract leaders, in the governmental sector who have been thoroughly trained and equipped, and know how to handle their responsibility as public servants. And Africa is here to come alongside with teachings like this that you can benefit from. That serve as an inspiration to you, that you can serve your community. You can help build Africa up, by being properly equipped and properly trained academically to function in capacity of leadership within the government sector. So thank you again for everybody for joining us. The teaching is going to be available on YouTube as well, so you can just direct people there to listen, to get more informed and more knowledge on the area of public administration. We will be back next week, and we'll have someone hopefully that will inspire us in another area of expertise that will benefit Africa. So we'll leave you with the motto of our organization: doing better by doing right. Africa can do better if she simply does right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.